We begin our report with President Biden, unable to shake off his debate performance from last week. Campaign officials say he's not dropping out of the 2024 race, but that has not ended the conversation. Democratic officials have moved from private grumbling to public expressions of concern over his age and capacity.
Like a lot of people, I was pretty horrified by the debate, the blips of President Biden, and the barrage of lying from President Trump.
We have to be honest with ourselves that it wasn't just a horrible night, but I won't go beyond that.
I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition? And so when people ask that question, it's completely legitimate of both candidates.
On Tuesday, Congressman Lloyd Doggett of Texas took it a step further, saying in a statement, "I am hopeful that he will make the painful and difficult decision to withdraw. I respectfully call on him to do so." The president will sit down with ABC News this week for his first interview since that debate with Donald Trump. The campaign has also tried to reassure Democrats with fundraising numbers. The Biden team says it raised $264 million in the second quarter of the year, but it was not enough to eclipse the Trump campaign, which reported $331 million raised. Earlier, CBS News' Weijia Zhang asked the White House about the debate.
If it's not his stamina, if he prepared, as you guys say, for so long, if it's not a problem with his mental fitness, what happened that night?
He said, "I'm not as smooth as I used to be. I don't debate as well as I used to. I don't walk as easily as I used to. But one thing that he knows is how to deliver for the American people."
CBS News campaign reporter Nydia Cavazos asked Vice President Kamala Harris for her reaction to Democrats' concerns.
Joe Biden is our nominee. We beat Trump once, and we're going to beat him again, period.
Susan Page joins me now. She's the Washington bureau chief of USA Today. Susan, it's good to be with you. I want to start with Nancy Pelosi because you are her biographer. So what better person to read between the lines? What do you hear when Nancy Pelosi says, "I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition?"
You know, John, I think your question is exactly right. Of all the Democrats, nervous Democrats you had quoted there in that piece, the one to listen to is Nancy Pelosi. That was, in Nancy Pelosi speak, that was an extraordinary admission of trouble for Biden and a message that was targeted right him. For her to say it's a legitimate question means it's not just the media overreacting. And for her to say, was it an episode or a condition? Which of those things sounds like a good thing for a presidential candidate to have? Oh. Neither one of them. I think that Pelosi's statement, more than anything else we heard today, opens the door to more trouble, more questions for Biden on whether he can stay at the top of the ticket.
So given that, you've covered Washington and you know what's the difference between a tempest in a teapot and what's a teapot dome, though you weren't covering the Harding administration. But is this real? Is it just a firestorm that will burn out? Help us understand, given the great context you just gave us on Nancy Pelosi, kind of where this stands.
Yeah, I think this is not a tempest in a teapot. I mean, I think anyone who watched the debate, including some of Joe Biden's fiercest supporters and best friends, people who've worked with him for decades, were shocked by his performance. And it raised questions about his mental acuity. These are questions that the White House and the campaign have been dismissing as bedwetting. But it was there for 90 minutes for everyone to see that this is a significant issue for Joe Biden. And what did Nancy Pelosi say he had to do? Do several interviews with serious reporters. And there's also calls for him to do full-scale news conferences, which he has a record of almost never doing, fewer real news conferences than any of his modern predecessors. That would be a chance for people to see whether this was a bad night, as the White House is saying, or something more serious than that. But this has not gotten smaller as the days have passed since Thursday's debate. It continues to get bigger.
You know, just lingering for a moment on that idea of having lots of press conferences and things like that. I mean, let's imagine on the one hand that dispelled these questions about age. It nevertheless means he's opening himself up to a barrage of questions. I mean, that's not a walk in the park, even for the most seasoned politicians, to have that much steady fire from questioners.
News conferences are hard. although they are something we have come to expect presidents to do. And the fact that the White House has not scheduled news conferences is because they are concerned about the answers that Joe Biden would give, because they're concerned about his ability to speak clearly and quickly on his feet. And we saw an example of that in the debate. A debate is like a news conference. It's unscripted. And when we've seen Biden be effective in the days after the debate, including at that Friday rally in Raleigh, he was reading off a teleprompter. That is not going to persuade skeptics that he is up to the job.
USA Today recently had a poll on this question about, with respect to President Biden. How should we be thinking about public opinion and how it goes, initial responses versus what might linger?
Yeah, well, we saw Donald Trump gaining just over 3 points in our poll, now leading Biden by 3 points. But the more serious thing we saw was this: 41% of Democrats said they wanted Biden replaced at the top of the ticket. That is the number to watch, because it's Democrats who will nominate Joe Biden. It's Democrats to whom he will presumably listen, and they don't have much time. This nomination the roll call for the nomination. We expect it to take place in a couple weeks, even before the convention opens in August.
And finally, Susan, does this create any problems for, and how do they handle them, Democrats in tough races, either in congressional districts or some of those tough Senate races?
Yeah, this is one of the arguments we heard another Democratic Congressman, Mike Quigley, make today, was that Biden is putting at risk the rest of the ticket. We already have a situation where in some of these tight Senate races, the Senate candidates are leading Joe Biden. The Democratic Senate candidates are helping Joe Biden rather than the other way around. And if Joe Biden puts whole new states that we thought were safely Democratic in play, that is very serious news for Democrats holding the Senate and regaining the House.
Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief at USA Today. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, John.